Malo Elere and Talo Falava to all our viewers around the world. This is another live digital kava session on the Polynesian Eyes podcast. I'm Mr. Aotearoa coming live from Aotearoa, Auckland, Manurewa. Beautiful day here on this side of the world. Very honored to have a familiar guest on Maui Tekelangi. Um, and yeah, we're very excited to talk about topics for what happened the last few weeks or so, or this past week. And yeah, that's it for me. Oh, I also want to say that we're also live from Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and X, and Patreon. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, shoot it our way, especially our super chats. I know Tua, you will touch on that. We'll always prioritize them as they're paying contributing members to the Polynesian Eyes podcast. Oh, yeah, awesome. UTL,
Yeah.
Show.
So that just
Hello.
popped up. He just became a paying member of the Polynesian Eyes podcast. Malo UTOL.
Yes, official. Malo Shikaumai. Thank you for joining.
Yes,
Tua?
UTOL. You picked the perfect live digital kava session to become a paying member of the channel. Malo Pito. Just before I hand it back, Masi, just a
Yo.
friendly reminder. One of the benefits of being a paying member, and appreciate UTOL, paying members, your comments get highlighted when we go live, right?
Correct.
So you don't have to do a super chat, as we say, a digital kava bag. But if you're a paying member like UTOL, you get preference, and we make the effort to highlight your comments when we go live.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Masi.
Malo Kaumai UTOL. And yeah, like I said, awesome to always have the opportunity to have Maui Tekelagi join us. Maui, how's everything going for you today?
Oh, it's great to be back on the podcast. Been meaning to hop on for a while, and even better, not is it just a podcast, but it's a digital kava session. Those are my favorite,
Mm,
and good to have this digital kava session with everybody.
nice,
Malo,
nice.
appreciate it. Malo, we're always excited to have
Yes.
Maui Tegelangi join us. I think the trick, Mr. Aotearoa, you just have to fly Maui Tegelangi to New Zealand. You gotta
Mm,
fly him to New Zealand. Last time we had him, he was in America, so we just have to catch him during his world
yes,
travels because Maui
yes,
is known to travel around the world. So I
yes.
guess that's we have to catch him in between his world travels.
Yes. Well, he did Maui Tegelang, you did say it's much cooler in Aotearoa than in Tonga at the moment. So I think he's
Oh
enjoying
yeah,
the weather in Aotearoa
absolutely,
at the moment.
absolutely.
Awesome. Well, we're very excited for today, and like it's like the universe was waiting for this to align. We were not anticipating that Maui Tekelangi would join us live when we were putting together some of the concepts for the
Mm,
show. But
mhm.
how appropriate, how appropriate. It's like it was meant to be. And for a lot of our viewers and listeners, you've probably seen the last week and a half we haven't been responding to a lot of comments online back and forth, as we say, this is the side gig. Unfortunately, we still gotta work the day job, we still gotta pay bills, and every once in a while we just we take a break from the social media because it's a little exhausting
Yeah,
sometimes,
yeah,
and
yeah.
just to kind of give you an idea, like Mr. Aotearoa, we covered some of the numbers on just one of the Facebook pages for
Hmm.
2025 had 2.4 million views
Correct.
alone.
Congratulations, that's
So,
impressive.
yeah.
Polynesian Ice podcast.
And then
Yeah.
if we
Impressive.
add the other social media channels, we're probably anywhere between 3.5 to 4 million views throughout
Yeah.
all the different social media channels. And so you add that, you add the thousands of interactions, actually tens of thousands of interactions, thousands of comments. There's we have wives and children. They don't like it when if all we do is sit around and respond to social media. It's barely enough to get us here. You see how hard it is to get Maui Tegelangi to join us back on the show? Come on,
Mm,
guys. we're barely squeezing through, but really appreciate the support there. And Mr. Atero, can you give some background? The show today is on the story of who.
Right.
Apparently, kind of give the context. We invited him when we were just what, 4 months old as a
Yes.
program very early. We just wanted to hear him tell his stories because everybody online was saying this is a great guy. You get to hear all the great knowledge that he has and kind of give the context there. And we tried to have him in some of the videos we've responded to Mr. Ateroa.
Yeah. Well, I'll just share what my experience of what I can first recall of our first interaction with him. I think it was the Ufi video.
Yes.
Tua, from what I
Yeah.
believe. Um, so the story of who reacted to our video about Ufi, and at the moment, I think we're still pretty correct that Ufi is not a crop that is eaten in Samoa often, and he responded with the saying of that there's Ufi New Guinea and Ufi something, but I stand corrected that it's Ufi Vao that's commonly eaten in Samoa, right? It's Ufi Vao. So if you guys know what Ufi Vao is, and all the Samoans would know, it's hard and you cook it for a long time because it's grown like just any vow that pops up. There's really no caretaking for it. So that's the first interaction with story of who, and he responded. And then after that, we've invited him multiple times. I believe you have reached out to him multiple times, Tua. He agreed in the beginning, and then when it gets closer to actually set a schedule, my man backed out. Maybe he likes just the little TikTok 10-minute snippets response. It's much easier than doing a proper
Yeah.
talanoa, which you would think it's an open invitation. When you have talanoa, that's how our Polynesian ancestors have always done things. It's always with the talanoa. So that hasn't happened, but from my understanding, it seems like he's responded multiple times, even though he's told us he's not gonna respond to any more videos after the Ufi video.
Yeah.
And here we are today. So
Yes. And
yeah,
then
that's just background.
he also criticized Jake Fitzemanu, who
Oh,
actually came on the show. Remember, he came on, and Jake Fitzemanu is from Upolu and Savai'i, and so we say gay. We may not agree with everything Jake says or his perspective, but he came on the show and we had a conversation.
and that's the thing. Fichi Semandu came on the field. The story of who is still sitting in the bench trying to cheer and say we should have done it this way and do it that way.
Yeah.
But that's the funny thing, and that's like everybody else who don't want to have skin in the game. They like to do the snippets instead of having a proper talanoa to talk about. And Fichi Semanu, to my understanding, the Fichi Semanu is strong direct links to the Maria Toa clan and family. So Fitise Manu is a lot more credible to my beliefs in history than story of who's doing 10 minutes critiquing on short clips. So
Yes.
that's just my sharings there, Tua.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting, Maui Tegelangi, because I reached out to Maui Tegelangi, was it a couple days ago, asking
Yeah.
him about a couple questions, and then I didn't know he was going to be in New Zealand and available. So even better, I don't have to do any memorization or notes or anything. We can hear it
Awesome.
straight from Maui Tegelangi, and then so we're going to react to 3 videos of Story of Who. We're going to start with the first one, and this is a discussion on tattoos, right? And this
Mhm.
is one of the things that we encourage. This is why we follow the kava session model, because it's about sharing ideas and having discussions. It's not just ideas that everyone always agrees on that you talk about. It's going to be the battle of ideas. Like we said, you bring your idea, probably has a really good roundhouse kick, and you
Mhm.
knocked out every other idea out there. But when you come to another one, maybe another one has a really good block and the uppercut, and your
Mhm.
roundhouse kick gets exposed, and that's not a bad thing. That means you just go back to the drawing board and see if your ideas are still correct, Or even better, if it's a bad idea, kill it.
Correct.
Kill
Kill it.
it. You
Can't
know?
stand on its own.
Yeah. And what are your thoughts on that approach, Mau Tegelangi, while I set up our first video talking
Yeah,
about discussions?
that's what Kava session is all about. It's about sharing thoughts and ideas, and that's how the ancestors hashed out problems. And not only that,
Mm,
even discussed science, politics, everything. They
mm,
discussed it over the kava bowl, and the whole idea of having a kava session is to hash out things that might not be clear, and don't worry about what's right or wrong right away. But
mm,
time will tell which is right, which is wrong. But I mean, to me, even just for Polynesian cultural sake, you would want to join conversations because everybody knows that all the islands were colonized, and the colonizers for like a generation or two would like disallow even speaking the language,
Hmm.
mm,
disallow passing on knowledge. And so there's a huge gap that exists of knowledge that's been able to filter down to the more modern generations. And a lot of the history that was written down during this gap was from the colonizers' perspective. And so they didn't understand everything that they saw or
mm,
everything that all the information they came across. And so, hey, I mean, Tonga kind of does have an edge because we were never colonized. And so I would naturally think that it should be uh, easier to swallow for all the neighboring islands to accept that fact that Tonga was never colonized, so that we would naturally have an edge on understanding and determining what was truly our culture and what was not, and to sieve through that foreigner slash colonizer lens that was inherited by a lot of the colonized countries. But I guess maybe not so.
mm,
No, and that's the thing, and that's one of the things that we've kind of shared here. I think because we live in the modern world now, and we have to say Samoa, we have to say Tonga, we have to say Tokelau as it's like these separate entities. I, I really do believe this, that Tonga surviving colonization is a win for everyone, right? Like
mm,
it's almost like viewed sometimes that it's like, oh, the Tongans have their colonization that's separate. No, it's actually a win for the entire Polynesian culture, because I remember one thing you were sharing, um, Maui Tegelangi, was there were certain times throughout the civilization and the empire, the Tuitonga, or the leadership, was fishing for what the best idea or solution was. And I remember you mentioning one time there was like a Kalia building, invitation for the best ideas, and you shared that, you know, Tokelau provided a new technology that dramatically improved the whole civilization as a whole, with providing a new way of building kalias with planks from different boats rather than a single hull from a tree. And this is also true, I think, for the ideas, like you were saying, Maui Tegalangi. Our ancestors were doing these kava sessions, trading ideas, challenging ideas, and the best ideas rose to the top. And because Tongatapu was the capital, naturally, any good ideas anywhere else would simmer to the top and be presented there. And really, a win of the Polynesian Empire having its capital survive colonization is a win to everyone. And therefore, everyone should naturally navigate or gravitate towards that. That's just kind of something that came to mind.
mm.
Anything you want to add there, Mr. Atero or Maui Tegalangi, while I open up our next video, or our first video, actually?
No, I was just thinking that to it's always when you come across uh greater knowledge or something. I mean, imagine radio waves or the cell phone 100 years ago. It's it seems impossible and it's hard to accept.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
so, and understanding different concepts of even culture and how things were, and if you have a limited knowledge, it's going to be difficult to swallow what other people know more of, because they have a greater knowledge of from different angles of history and culture. And so someone who's not as versed is going to find it more difficult to swallow. But anyways, let's uh let's check this out.
Sweet.
Mm.
All right. Let me know if you guys ever want to pause in between the video, um, and do some commentary.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't have the sound.
Whakau i le pea. Por kakau fo.
Salo for lava. What's up, everybody? Yeah, hello, lover for love. Yeah, man, I can't.
Oh, I didn't save the. Let's. I want to find that video. I didn't realize that. So this is story of Bo. He jumps into a response, but I wanted us to watch the video of the guy. He goes online and he asks the question. So I apologize.
Okay. No. Oh, good.
Um,
Oh, good.
because I think that's to me. I was very excited to hear that, to see someone jump online
Mm.
and ask that question, right? To be like,
Mm.
hey, did this really happen? Is this the truth? Because that's what we need to have more of. We need to have more of those types of conversations.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that while I just kind of fill in while I try to find this?
No, I mean, I'll just add on with the whole conversation of just, especially with the tattoo. I think it's all part of just understanding each other's perspective and adding their ideas to the table. And if it stands, it makes sense, and it's just expanding on what people's current knowledge of Polynesian history. Because like I said, like I think Maui Tekelangi touched on it. A lot of the Pacific was colonized, and there's huge gaps, and it's just part of the Talanoa. And if people are open-minded to ideas and are humble enough to admit, okay, maybe this is the correct version of it and the correct standing because Tonga was not colonized. This is the actual oral history. And then when you add on to the data points, we've kind of mentioned, you touched on it on one of the videos you just released, Dua, about there was the carbon dating on the Ha'amonga, and then there's another data point of the weathering of the Ha'amonga, which pushed the dates even further, back. So, it's just all gathering all these dates, scientific evidence, oral histories, and then actual interpretation of events play a huge role in you know, uncovering our history. Because I'm a believer. If you understand your Polynesian history, you have a better identity of who you are and why your ancestors did certain thing, and that's a impactful, let me see, impactful moment for a person to do better for the future. So, I mean, that's why we have
Yeah.
this Talanoa on the
Han.
Polynesianized podcast. But that's kind of my thoughts there.
Yes, Malo Vito. Hey, here's another one of our very common opposition, but we accept all
Yeah.
opposition. This is Boomtown Bullet, aka Gout Bullet, Malo Vito Toko Uso. That's
Mm.
Boomtown's nickname, Gout Bullet. But thank you for joining us,
Malo Boomtown
Malo.
Bullet.
And it's a story of Bo.
Okay.
Boomtown Bullet is
This
one of our fans or
this
opposition
this
that
video
tagged
is
us.
about the tattoos, right?
Yeah, this is the video. So this is, I didn't realize that story of who didn't include this guy's full
Mm.
question because he asked a question. So we'll do this. This is the video he was reacting to.
Nei, maro TikTok. E la lo fsili o. O lo fsili. E whakau i le pea. Por kakau fo. O ele whakau i le pea. E whakau i le kufunga.
Mm.
Nanga e ye lo wo konga le man. Siri apa whapalangi I should
Now that before he goes into English, Masi, anything there That he just quick translation, or we just go into the English part? Did anything stick out to you?
Yeah, for my understanding, he's starting off that he wants to talk about, he wants to share his thoughts on tattooing, and then he said, "No, here's the correct version. I want to share on the people the tattooists." That's what he says
Mm,
when he goes from pea or tatao, saying the
To the
tufunga and
tufunga. Yeah.
iyo, and I think that's more correct, right? It's not the actual tattoo, but it's the tattooists of, they're the ones who are doing the
work.
the tattoo, the work. So that's what
Okay.
he's pretty
Okay.
much saying.
Okay.
Explain this in English because I want to hear the Tongan side and I want to hear the Samoan side. So I have a Tongan friend, and his story on how the tufungas, for those who don't know what a tufunga is, it's the person that does the Samoan pea, the traditional way, or the tatau. His story that he grew up was the Tongans created the Samoan tufunga. It was they were forced to learn um, how to tattoo, so they can tattoo the Tongan pea as a punishment. So if you're a Tongan historian, a Samoan historian, yeah, man, let's debate it. I want to hear both
Yeah,
sides
yeah, I like
Mm,
it.
because that's not the story that I grew up with. So yeah, let's hear it.
mm,
So story of who has the response, right, to that. Um, oh, that's not what I wanted there. Let me pull this up correctly. Sorry. What's what are your guys' thoughts, Mr. Mautekelang? Anything from your perspective from the Tongan side?
Well, I don't know any history throughout Polynesia of where actually tattoo started from, but we do know it's uniquely Polynesian. And there are some islands in Polynesia that marked um, people who had been banned from society or who were considered um, prisoners of society to have certain tattoo markings. Um, and one thing you need to understand is that in oral history throughout Polynesia, there's a lot of times because we live on small islands and we don't want to disturb the peace. We want to maintain the peace. There's unwritten things that everybody knows but nobody says.
mm,
And
mm,
so the fact that he's bringing up the question, is it's usually something that's not done in the open traditionally. So like, but having a podcast like this is kind of like traditionally been taboo. But I
mm,
think we're in modern times where things deservedly should be discussed openly, and the truth is the truth. But the fact that it's just hard to say who started tattoos, but it's difficult to say that it wasn't Tonga because the earliest tattoo kit was found in Tonga before
Yes.
anywhere else, and so that's an archaeological fact. And so to go against archaeological fact, where do you draw the line? I don't know, but it's an interesting conversation to have.
mm.
Mr. Atero?
Yeah, no, I'll share my interaction. So, my wife is part Samoan, and her Samoan family are from Solo Solo, Vayala, and where else? And Lepea. And her grandfather grew up in Samoa, played for Manu Samoa. He's 91. So I asked him, certain histories regarding the tattoo, because he's not tattooed with the Songai Miki or the Pea. And I asked him what his thoughts, because he's lived a very long life, you know, for Polynesian male get to their 90s, it's
He's
it's
seen a lot.
n-
He's seen and
he's
heard a
seen a
lot.
lot, and you don't hear it, especially Polynesian males. We don't. It's women. It's kind of a lot of them get to that age, but Polynesian males don't really get to that age. So I asked him, what was his what was his experience with pe'a, and he said when he was growing up as a kid, it wasn't a big thing how it is now in Samoa. And he said when he was about a teenager, he said he heard some guys also get it. And with this, I know they have like a certain protocol that is doing it now, and they've kind of developed it into like this culture of service. And I see, and this is the thing, when he grew up, he's 91 or 90 years old. It wasn't a thing. It could have just been like like when you say tufunga, these are very specialized
Skill sets. Yeah,
skill,
people.
right? And it could have been maybe that certain family, because it was revived in Samoa, because it was the what family, or Shuape family, that's kind of brought it up, and it's kind of made it a normalized thing, especially in Samoa customs. But he said growing up, it wasn't a thing, and it just came up, and then they developed certain cultural things of ceremony of people getting it. So to me, what I interpret that as, that maybe it was just a village thing that specialized in their certain designs, and maybe certain tufungas that didn't last or didn't make it to today is maybe have gone or lost, but the one that's more dominant, that you see a lot, that's been taught to other tattooists or other tufungas, that could have been from that same family of the Suluape that's kind of revived the tattooing in Samoa. But see, and that's the thing. If it wasn't a big thing till when he was young, and then then he grown up, especially when he was a teenage boy, and then it's become developed something, and just like
No, but
anything when you
it's going back. This is going back to the point that I made.
yeah.
When the Pacific Islands were being Christianized, they stopped a lot of the traditions being passed down. And even in Samoa, the tattooing was stopped.
Mm,
When this Christianization process, and call it, when these countries were being colonized, traditional navigation was not allowed to be passed on. Even the language was not allowed to pass on. A lot of the culture, like in Samoa, tattooing, and even Tonga. Tonga had a history of tattooing, but when they became Christianized, they even have laws that were written into the Vava'u Code, and the
Codified
early
law.
laws, the codified law against having tattoos. And so
mm,
it's easy to understand that that's exactly what happened across Polynesia,
mm,
and even in Samoa. And since we're talking about tattooing, it was gone for a while. A few families held on to it, and it got revived.
mm.
And just because it got revived in one place in Polynesia, it doesn't mean it was revived in all the other places. Like in Tonga, it never got revived. But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean Tongans didn't have tattoos. When it's clear throughout history,
Recorded history. The Europeans
recorded
recorded it
history,
pretty heavily.
Tongans did have a tattoo culture. And so just to say that, oh, Tonga doesn't have a tattoo culture in the year 2000, so they never had it in the past. That's a false premise, because we know throughout colonization and Christianity, a lot of the traditional practices were stopped.
Mm.
No,
Yeah. So
100%. Oh, go
yeah.
ahead, Mas.
No, no. I was gonna say, so yeah, just like what Maui Tegelangi was saying. So my understanding is, I'm just trying to figure out what's the purpose, right? Like the gentleman shared that it was it for punishment. That could have been one, and then Maui Tegelangi shared that there are some oral histories that in Tonga that it was a mark of somebody doing something they're not supposed to, right? But obviously it's kind of evolved, because what is it now? It's kind of a good thing of saying your service, right?
Mm.
And that's what I'm trying to understand, because no one really knows what the purpose, because he was gone for a while. What's the purpose of getting that's how I've heard some other theories of it was putting the mark of trying to navigate when you couldn't tell the stars when you're navigating the ocean. So there's a bunch of different theories, and that's what we're trying to dissect, and I'm trying to understand myself about it. So I mean, that's just
Yeah.
what I've heard. Just my
The
experience.
in Tongan culture and history, um, most men could get a tattoo, except the tuitonga and the heir to the tuitonga. They were not allowed to get a tattoo,
Mm.
and so yeah, they were
Well,
not allowed to get a tattoo.
no, and that's what's also interesting, and I think one of the reasons why, to me, it's been helpful for me to not look at at Polynesia as an isolated, quote unquote, boundaries like we have today. And if you think of it more as an empire and a flow of ideas, like you mentioned, Maui, we don't know exactly where the tattoos come from. But if this is a new technology or a new idea, I can tell you when you look at other empires, those ideas flow to the capital and then it
Mm.
seems to disperse from there, right? And so that's we know it was practiced by almost every other Polynesian out there, right? And people can modify it just like
Mm.
we do modifying tattoos today. Tattoos were used sometimes to, like the concentration camps, put your
Mm.
number on your hand, right? Sometimes they're
Identification.
tattoos because I'm part of
Mm.
a gang. We have history, some people's ideas of you would put your clan so that when you're fighting, you would know each other. There's all these
Yeah,
ideas out there.
yeah, that's another one. That's
Um,
correct.
but the one to really explain it best is like we talked about of the new boat technology. Whenever a new idea that is found to have some value, it makes it to the capital and then it gets dispersed all over. And the other interesting thing, just kind of going along with the tattooing, is Danny, when Masi and I looked at the first contact of Westerners with Ha'amoa, they were the high chiefs in Ha'amoa did not get tattooed.
Mm.
And the explanation that's usually given is because of their relation. It seems like the closer related you were to the Tuitonga, the less likely you were to get tattooed. Because the explanation that they were given was because of their quote unquote aiki, it was forbidden to spill their blood. And obviously, when you're doing tattooing, blood gets spilled, and that's not acceptable for that sacredness of the blood. So
Mm.
very interesting. Some of the comments there. We'll jump to the story of Bo's response and to the video and kind of go from there. Let's bring this back here for us to look at.
Yeah, I can't help myself but laugh at all the new narrative that these people are trying to push and try to discredit what it is and what belongs to us Samoans. Now, the truth of the matter is when the daughter of Amalele married the Tuiha Takalawa and gave birth to a boy named Ngata. Now Ngata created his own kingdom in Hihifo, and he modeled his kingdom in the Whaamatai system of the Samoa. Hence why you have the Hingoa Whakanofo, the Eiki, you have the Tafa'is, you have the Matapules, and you have all of this. So all of this, they are all tied back to the Samoan system. Like you have the Tuyatua, and then you have the Tafa'is of the Tuyatua, you have the Tulafales. The Tulafales is the same as the Matapules. That was a system that he created within his kingdom. Now, he also took a lot of Samoan customs and Samoan part of the Samoan culture and incorporated it into his kingdom. Um, and this is the line that eventually became the dominant line of the Tuitongas. Then there was when his line was created, it became there were three lines of the Tuitonga. It was the Tuitonga, Tuiatakalawa, and the Tuikano Kupolu line. And eventually the Tuikano Kupolu became the most dominant line, where to this day, Tuikano Kupolu, or the Ano of Upolu, the flesh of Upolu line, is currently ruling the kingdom of Tonga. But all of this ties back to Ngata. Hence why in Tonga you have the Kakawolunga, you have the Kailao. All of these are part of the Samoan culture. Now, when it comes to the pea, and the tattooing. I know across Polynesia, across the Pacific, every island had their own method of tattooing. They had their own tattoos. But when it comes to Lapea, there's the story that the Tongan friend of Ace told him is completely bullshit or completely bollocks.
I,
Because if
I,
you understand,
I find that so rich after hearing this whole line of baloney. Homeboy's comeback is everything that other
BS.
guy said is BS. Anyways, that was too good. We'll there's that. Oh, dude, this is a 10-minute video. I don't know. Let's give him a few more. Let's anything to add here. Any responses here before we continue? I didn't realize this thing's 10 minutes.
No, no. See, you can. I just want to say something real quick. He doesn't understand the relationship between the um the Tuitonga and Tuihatakalaua and the Tuikanukupolu. And the Amma who came from Kupolu is actually Amma who came from Kupolu is actually they're actually Tongans.
Really?
Well,
Because
yes.
there's been a lot of comments
See, because let me
yeah.
okay, let me kind of give a background history. So when Kaul Fonua Fekai,
Before
so
you get
so
into it, real quick, Danny,
yeah,
let me add here because UTOL became our newest paying member. We make sure we take care of our paying members. He says, Masi, this guy, I don't know how they are so confident with no school. Maria, UTOL. Well, this is the education. Maui Teke Langi is going to give the Polynesian Eyes Kava Session education, UTOL.
no, that's what's so funny. That's what I'm saying is so funny about how he talks about the Tu'ikanukupolu as if it was a kingdom on his own, and he says his kingdom. It wasn't his kingdom. Being a Tu'ikanukupolu was a responsibility.
Mm.
He didn't have a kingdom. The kingdom belonged to the Tu'itonga. When he was made the the Tu'ikanukupolu, he was given a responsibility over the all the people in Tonga. It was like a local responsibility. So the Tu'ikanukupolu was to make sure that all the land which belonged to the Tu'itonga was cultivated by the people and made the
Productive.
general use of the land was being used properly for the benefit of the whole um, kingdom. The Tu'iha Takalawa was responsible for preparing and presenting the the Polo Polo and the Inasi to the Tu'itonga and gathering the whole country, including the Tu'ikanukupolu, which had protocols in handing over um, everything from the entire country, all the tribute and everything to the Tu'ihatakalawa, and then the Tu'ihatakalawa presented it to the Tu'itonga. The Tu'ihatakalawa was also in charge of trade with the countries outside of Tonga. And so if you look at all the important places for the rest stops for canoes and everything, they're all related to the Tu'iha Takalawa. The Tu'iha Takalawa had charge of those places. So Tu'iha Takalawa was kind of like border control, like immigration and border control.
Mm.
And so I mean it's he 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 talks about the Tu'iha Takalawa and the Tu'ikanukupolu like they're separate kingdoms. They're not separate kingdoms because but the reason why they think that way is because that's how it is in Samoa. This king is his own king separate from this
Chieftains.
king. Yeah, its
Mm.
own chiefdoms, its own
Mm.
Tuya Anna, is different
Tuya
from
Tua.
Tuya Tua. It's like but in Tonga they had separate functions, but everything belonged to the Tuitonga. So right off the bat, you can tell that he doesn't know what he's talking about because he talks about the Tu'ikanukupolu and the creation of Ngata See, if and that's where he should have caught himself if he was a serious historian right away. What does this sound like? A chief from Samoa is brought to the Tu'i Hatakalaua to marry the Tu'i Hatakalaua, and his son becomes the Tu'i Kanukupolu, the first Tu'i Kanukupolu. Does that sound like
Invasion.
invasion? Or does that sound like an arranged marriage and this is how we're going to set up our system? And right off the bat you can tell that this is it this it's he has concepts of western
Mm.
kingdoms and kingship being meshed with what happened traditionally here in Tonga and Samoa, not understanding it at all. And so that's why you can totally discredit just how he describes it. He doesn't understand. And what he needs to understand is that where Ama came from in Upolu, yes, they came from Samoa, but it was from a Samoan village that was created to support Kaulfonua Fekai when Kaulfonua Fekai lived in Samoa. And
Mm.
so they were Tongans that followed the Tuitonga. They settled number of places in Upolu, and then when the Tuitonga came back 5 generations later to the kingdom of Tonga, he was sent for to bring his daughter, because after coming back to Tonga and talking with the Tu'i Hatakalaua, they realized they needed to create another line of kings because the country was growing, there was bigger population, whatever the reason was. And so the Tu'i Tonga told Ama to come back with his daughter, married the Tu'i Hatakalaua, and they created the third line of
Yeah.
kings.
I want
And
to
that's
add
how the
something real quick there, Danny. I think this is where it's important. Like you said, zoom out and think not Samoa, not Tonga, not think Polynesian Empire under the Tuitonga and a rich history that has been like this. These are the same families, these are the same group of people. And he's kind of right off the bat, he's presenting Samoa as an independent nation that never really existed as an independent nation, coming to Tonga like it was a
well,
separate
well,
nation.
let see, and this is the way that current Samoans think of Samoa is a Western academic construct. So Samoa was given their independence, but it wasn't the time of Kaulufonua Fekai. It was at the time of Momo and Tuitaatui. Momo, which is like close to 1,000 years, actually 400 years, probably about 400 years before Kaulfonua Fekai, is when Momo and his son Tuitaatui was when, and Momo was actually the one who kind of gave Samoa their independence. But as part of their independence, they had to be cut off from what was considered the cradle of Polynesia, or the root. They were cut off from the root. They were made to be a branch, like the rest of the Polynesian islands were considered branches to the root.
Mm.
Mm.
And so Samoa was independent from that time. That's why the whole story about Sangone and Kava, the Tuitonga gave Kava, or authority, to each head of the family, Ulumotua, or head of the family, to be their own chief in their own island or their own village. And so that's why the Samoan Kava Bowl has multiple legs to represent all the multiple islands and villages of each chief that has their own Kawa.
Mm.
And
So
so,
real quick, when you say independent in that nature, it's not quote unquote independent as separate, but it's a status within. It's like statehood, a separate state, like
Yeah.
no,
West
no,
Virginia
which,
becoming
which,
West
no,
Virginia rather
no,
than
no, 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 no,
part
no,
of
no,
Virginia.
no. That's not what happened. See, that's how the Samoans take it, because they think of Samoa as a separate state. But what it was each independent extended family had their own autonomy. So each village and each island in Samoa had their own kava, so they were considered like independent villages.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
Okay.
So
Go ahead.
it's like the Greek city states. Each city state was their own. Each village was their own. They had their own. And then what Tonga's policy towards Samoa after that? Well, and another thing is Samoans used to have a H in their language. This is where the whole term. This is where the word. This is where the word fa'asa comes from. Because one of the conditions was because in the olden days, whenever a navigator found a new island, he had the tangata ifonua rights to that island, and him and his family had certain rights because they were the ones he was the one who found that new land. But to help separate them, and it was kind of like a protection for them too to enforce their rights, they took one letter or switched one letter in the language. And that's how the branches were differentiated from the root of Polynesia. When the Tuitonga allowed Lafai, who was from Savaii, and kind of Savaii and Kupolu, Savaii and Kupolu went along um, with Lafai, what Lafai believed in. So Savaii was actually Hawaii too. It was also Hawaii. But they were told to fa'asa or fa'asa, that means to make an S. Every evening, every chief and every village and throughout the Samoa had to bring his extended family together, and they had to practice replacing the language, replacing the H with the S. And that's what fa'asa, the term fa'asa came from.
Mm.
It's
Okay.
they changed their whole language to be like from H to S, and that was the that what and of course everyone wanted to do that because it was a self interest. Everyone wants to be their own chief, independent. So they all did forced their kainga to take out the H and replace it with the S, and that's where fa'asa comes from. And then that's why Tongans have a word that they say to Samoans when they come in Fiepoto, because intermarrying over the generations, of course there is intermarriages, and then you get Samoans who are used to being independent minded, and they tend to speak out of turn. And so a Tongan will turn to a Samoan when they speak out of turn and say sa.
Mm.
Sa means, remember, we made you change your language to put
Paasa.
S. Remember, we made you put S in your language. That's what sa means.
Okay. So if I understand this correctly, Danny, what you're saying is prior to that, Ha'amoa was treated as
The center,
extension of Tongatapu and
the
everything
root.
else,
It was
and it
still
was
considered part of
managed.
the root.
It was a
Yes.
first-hand management. Then through this transition, they were said, okay, and I'm sure there were probably leadership in Ha'amoa lobbying for it, right? Because there's certain benefits of that. They're lobbying for it. And Momo saying, okay, we'll give you what you want, but you lose certain privileges. It's like when Queen Elizabeth
Yeah.
told,
It's a give and take. It's a give and take.
yes,
And
it's
so
what the Queen of England told Harry. Was it Harry and his American wife? What's the one that
Myrtle or something. What's
Meghan
her?
Merkel,
Merkel?
Megan.
What's her husband?
Markle,
The was it?
Is she American or
She's
Canadian?
American. She's American. And that's what happened is Queen Elizabeth said, okay, if you're not going to commit to fulfill the responsibility of the royal family, cut. You don't get the benefits of the royal family if you aren't going to directly fulfill those. And they modified their responsibility. Ah, that's interesting. I've never heard of that before.
And
Hmm.
so this is and see the story of the kava, the story of the kava, you know, when and finding the shell of Sangone, finding the shell of Sangone, it talks about this time when Momo let Samoa to become kind of like independent and gave a kava to all the the heads of family ulumotua of all the different ainga in Samoa. And so that's the meaning, that's the metaphorical meaning of when the rat nibbled on the kava that grew at the
Mm.
head when
And got
kava was
dizzy.
buried. Yeah, of the story of the kava, the many the rat nibbled on it and got drunk, got nibbled on the kava and is a symbol of power. They got drunk of power. And a lot of the kaingas, they got rid of their ulumotuas because they were th- th- you know, they weren't being good leaders. They were forcing everybody. And then some of the the rats that nibbled on the kava, they happened to nibble on the sugarcane or the to at the foot of the where kava was buried. And when they nibbled on the to, it helped get rid of the drunkenness, their kona from the kava. And this is the origin. This is this story of what happened to Samoa at this time, because that's exactly what happened. A lot of the ulumotua of the various ainga, they thought it was easy to be a leader and to manage people. And then when they weren't able to, like, chaos actually ensued in Samoa. There were constant wars and arguments going on inside families, with neighboring families, neighboring villages. And some of the the chiefs came back to the Tuitonga for advice, asked to intermarry, and even Lafai actually went and asked for the daughter of the Tuitonga because he thought that he would be popular, but then he realized people didn't. When everyone has their own freedom, no one respects anybody. And so he went and asked for a daughter of the Tuitonga to marry into the Tuitonga line to help establish his prestige and order, which he thought he could.
He
And
tried
so,
to go back after he jumped off the ship.
yes, and that's the symbol. That's the symbol of the rat um, nibbling on the to. The sweetness gets rid of the bitterness of the kava, and this is the origination. This is the origin of the word poto. Poto is made up of two root words: po, which means night, and to, which means sugarcane. It means to be in a dark place, and then when
Sweet
you
and dark.
when you get sweet, and then you're like, ah, it's like the light goes off. You learn from your mistakes. That's what poto means. Poto doesn't really mean to be smart. It's taken on the meaning to be smart,
You
but it's
learn something.
it's you learn something. Eh? But now it's used in Tonga and Samoa as poto. All across Polynesia, this didn't happen, and that's why all the rest of Polynesia, from Tahiti to Hawaii, if you're smart, they say atamai. You have a good atamai. The reason why they don't use poto is because this history was strictly between Tonga and Samoa. Only Tonga and Samoa use the word poto.
Mm,
The rest of Polynesia
interesting.
use the akamai, atamai.
Atamai, yes.
Mm. Okay.
And so that's why, like, this is gonna be hard for a lot of Samoans to swallow, but that's the actuality and all the stories. And I'm bringing you the stories and the facts, known known stories that are metaphors of actual things that happened. But
Mhm.
because it's very impolite to say things directly, especially the Tongan way, because we have a lot of Samoan cousins and relatives. Even the Tuitonga back then had a lot of nephews and cousins and nieces. They're all Samoans. They decided to go that way. But Tongan history recorded all this that happened in a metaphoric story, which many historians have written in different places, different generations that tell the same story about the Kava and Sangone. And the fact is the facts,
You
you
know
know.
what's funny? And we'll come back to the video. I didn't realize 10 minutes, but this is great stuff. You know what my favorite thing about this is?
What's
What?
up?
You know how you're saying, we're telling it straight with the facts. There's the comments seen here. We're not going to get to every comment. Oh, what's the facts? What's the facts? You know what's funny? Yeah, like, look here. Like, look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Like, deleting comments, are we? I can't tell you how many times we get this comment. Oh, shoot. Look, there's another comment that came up before I could get back to it, right? Guys, we don't delete comments unless you're going to say the F bomb or something just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Comments don't get deleted on the Polynesian Eyes podcast and our social media. We want the comments. But this is what I was going to say, Danny. They're going to say, give us the evidence. We brought the guy who had more evidence than anyone 30 years. He brought DNA evidence. He brought archaeological evidence. He brought all this other stuff. And the same people in the chat right now who are saying, bring the evidence, are the same people who said, bring the evidence to the scientist who brought all the evidence. So there are some people, when certain people say you need more evidence, we're like, oh, from certain people, you've devalued your currency. You know,
Yeah.
you're still in the poll and no toll for you.
No talk for you.
Yeah. No, but these are where this is where the word poto comes from. It's
Mm.
because of what happened with Lafai, who got this idea that the Tuitonga was autocratic,
Hey,
and
Danny,
that
I have a quick question.
yeah,
Do you know the last name Fui Mauno?
yeah,
Where they come from?
Samoa and Niue.
In Niua.
Yeah,
Well, that's what I heard from one of our viewers. Guess who story of Bo's last name is?
Fui Maano.
It's Fui Mauno.
So he's is he f- but is he from the Samoan? It's basically the same family. They're related, the Fuimaono in Niue and in Samoa. But which one does he come from?
I don't know. It's just
I
that
think
someone.
I would guess Samoa.
Yeah, well, he's Samoan. He said he grew up in Samoa, but one of our viewers was like, I know the Fui Maunos from there in Samoa, and they're Tongan. He said, this guy better be careful because there's a good chance he has a strong tie to Tonga. Which
No,
yeah.
see, that's what I mean. It's too many Tongans and Samoans. They frame Polynesia as the different countries that it is today, but it wasn't like that back in the day.
100%.
And as a matter of fact, even if we went back to how it was back then, you had greater loyalty and affiliation from the clan that you came from than your geographic position.
Mm.
For
Yeah.
example, in Samoa or in Tonga, you would have two villages that are neighbors geographically on the map.
But
And they would have
oppositionally and by
they
clan.
would have
Yeah.
fine relations and everything, but they would have greater affiliation and loyalty to a different island that they hardly had contact with, but they're from the same clan.
Yeah. No, 100%.
That's how it was in the olden days. And it's funny, a lot of like this guy right here, the Fui Maano here, he's speaking too much in geographical terms of how the world is set up today.
Mm.
But
Western
in
perspective.
it's a Western perspective. It's more geographical. If you went back in the olden days, it's more about the family clan that you come from, the tribe that you come from, and those clans were spread out in all the islands.
No, 100%.
Samoa,
And one of
Tahiti,
yeah, one of the
Rarotonga.
one of the evidences we saw that Masi when we did the when Ulkalala and them assassinated what was the name of the Tuikan Kupolu?
Um,
Tukuaho.
Tukuaho.
mm,
It was evident, like you're saying there, Danny, when they came back to Ha'apai, a bunch of the chiefs in Ha'apai, instead of you would think like, oh, these are Ha'apai chiefs, where do they take off to?
mm,
A lot of them go to Ha'amoa because, like you're saying, this is not about geography and independent nations. This is
Yeah,
where is my closest clan that I can
your
find
rely
some
family.
on.
Yes,
security with
Mm,
and
yes,
I can
yes.
trust. And
Yeah,
so this is the kind of thing that we're kind of discussing here, and we've mentioned many times, just like we mentioned earlier, framing it from a zoomed in Samoa Tonga. When you zoom out and look at Polynesian Empire with the capital on Tongatapu, things make more sense when you kind of things flow better. But let's come back. Let's come back to the video here and have story of who continue for another couple minutes, and then we'll pause.
And the old gods of Samoa, the times of the Tangaloa Langi clan, when it existed, Tangaloa resided in the ninth heaven, or Langi Sautuaiva. There were nine heavens, nine stages of heaven. So on the Langi Sautuavalu, or on the eighth heaven of Tangaloa, is where all his Fa'atufunganga resided. None of the tufungas were, or the knowledge of the tufungas was with the common people. It was only with the gods. And what I mean by the tufungangas of Tangaloa, I'm talking about the tufunga faufali, that is the master carpenter, the tufunga fauva, the master boat builder, the tufunga tatatau, the master tattooist, and so forth. The different tufungas, or the tufungangas of Tangaloa, were all in the eighth heaven until Tangaloa decided to give it to the common people and created masters on Earth, or on in Samoa. Now,
You know what that actually kind of reminds me more of, Danny?
yeah.
The story of Momo giving Ha'amoa their kava. That seems to be more of a parallel to that, but just a thought there. Who knows?
goes back now. Let's go back to the story of where the tattoo comes from. Where we still have that debate: did it come from Fiji, as in Fiji Islands, or did it come from Fiji? Because the Fijians, they don't believe that it came from them. So we believe that the tattoo
I can't tell you how many Fijians would disagree with that 1000%. There's a lot of Fijians who say all of tattoo comes from Fiji. But homeboy over here says, oh, the Fijians, they say it's not them. You know, interesting.
the tattooing and the tattooing tools came from Fitiuta. Why would we believe that it came from Fitiuta? Because the nine heavens, or the Langisa Tuaiva of Tangaloa, was in Manua, where Fitiuta actually is. Now, if you look at the claim by this person that said that it was created for as a punishment for us, we never tattooed any of the common people of Tonga. The Samoans only tattooed the royal family of Tonga, only the royal family. Hence why when the royal and the Tongans had their own tufungas, but they were not allowed to tattoo any of the royal family, the king and his family. Why? Because they are commoners. They don't have the same status as them. Hence why the king Tupo, there's evidence that Tupo was a tattooed man himself. He had a pair. He was a Songa Imiki, and most of his royal family, they all traveled to Samoa. Even when he made the degree to ban tattooing in Tonga, the royal family members of Tonga still come to Samoa, and there is an understanding where the only the Samoan people are allowed to touch the bodies of the king and his royal family. Now, you ask me, what evidence do you have?
Okay. All right. Any feedback to that? Any thoughts? Lot was covered there.
No, it's the a lot of Tongan royalty and chiefs went to Samoa just because it was easier than because of the tapu that surrounded the chiefs and royal family in Tonga. That it's just as simple as that. It's
mm,
it's not. But even the Tuitonga himself and his heir were never tattooed. They
Mm.
were never tattooed.
And that's the thing that I find funny is there is written historical fact that even the high chiefs in Samoa were not tattooed. And and on one of the boats in Manono, a guy comes on the boat
Mm.
completely free of tattoos, and they state that because it sounds like they're like, oh, there's other people tattooed. This one guy comes on, and I think they were French guys, and the French guys go, we thought this could be the Tuitonga or one of the greatest high chiefs here in Samoa because he wasn't tattooed. The simple fact that he had zero tattoos on him,
Yeah.
the French were like, "Oh, this is someone important, right?" And it could be the Tuitonga. Even back then, in the 1800s, early no 1700s, in the 1700s, they knew right off the bat. So I find it interesting, like these things, and this is actually a very common that what's viewed as like I guess an attack from the Samoans to the Tongans is all your royal blood comes from Ha'amoa, you commoners. And remember, Masi, we did a whole podcast on this.
Right.
The definition of commoner and royalty means you have to have a monarch, and you have to have scale, and you have to have all these things, and that's even before you get to the history of the bloodlines and so forth.
No,
But
no,
even
no.
structurally,
But even, I mean, since we're talking about it, let's just be. I guess we're talking straight now. The reason why they were called the Tu'ikanukupolu was to show that it was a low ranked king.
yeah, they get
The
butthurt
fact
about
the
it, but
fact
that's
that
the
they were
truth.
called Kakano of Upolu, it's okay. This is the Samoan blooded king, which automatically in Tonga means you're a third ranked
Outsider.
king, which is exactly what he was. You had the Tui Tonga and then the Tui Hatakalaua, and then Tui Kanukupolu was the lowest ranked king.
Mm. Yeah. Right. No, and I was just gonna ask you, Danny, even why does the name, Ngata being the first Tuikang Polo, does that have a meaning of why it's called Ngata? Since we're talking about the Tuikang Polo and it's out of the rank of status, just by blood, is the third lowest of the three kings. Is there significant?
There is a significance, and when Kaulufonua Fekai was trying to establish his younger brother as the Tui Kanukupolu, as the Tui Hatakalaua.
Mm.
Um, he was trying to separate some of the powers. He wanted to avoid this idea that the Tui Tonga was autocratic, and he wanted to kind of create a balance of power in Tonga. So the Tui Tonga would hold on to as owner of all the land and take on the more, because the Tui Tonga was considered more like a priest king. They had priest functions in the ancient religion,
Religion. Mm.
and so he tried to maintain the priestly functions of the Tuitonga, and as the owner of the land, and kind of like more of the political function of the Tuitonga, to give that entirely to his younger brother as the Tui Hatakalaua. And so when he tried to establish his younger brother as the Tui Hatakalaua, and he still resided in Tonga, they weren't going to the person that he had appointed to take care of the political affairs of the kingdom. They still ended up coming to him. So what he needed to do, and what he did, was he had to remove himself physically from Tonga so that all the chiefs and the people of Tonga would
Be forced to go to him.
be forced to go to his younger brother to call all the shots and establish himself. And so that's why Kaulfonua Fekai um, removed himself, and he resided in Samoa, and he would only go once a year to the Polo Polo, which was presentation of the first fruits in December, and he would send a representative, which would be a son or a nephew or a grandson to represent him in the Inasi, which happened in July. So the Inasi and the Polo Polo, if it wasn't the Tuitonga, it would be a son, grandson, or nephew for July. But the Tuitonga would definitely go every December for the Polo Polo, which was the religious presentation of the first fruits. And so from Kaulufonua Fekai, for 4 generations, the Tuitonga resided in Samoa, and that's when Ama and all these Tongan villages
Go
were
to
established in
Upolu and all
Samoa.
those areas.
And so when the Tuitonga moved back, and they were going to create the Tuikanugupolu line, so what happened was when the Tuitonga moved back, it was almost as if the Tuihatakalawa had kind of fully established themselves, and they were brushing off the Tuitonga.
Got a little too independent.
Got a little too
So
independent.
so what you're
And
saying is
so,
Tatui Hatakalaua had a little too much cover, was getting a little bit
yeah. And
zigzaggy a little
so
bit.
they agreed to the to bring one of the Tuitonga's relatives, one of his chiefs and his relatives from Samoa, to marry the Tuihatakalaua, and then his son would take on more of the
Mm.
political responsibilities in handling the affairs of the kingdom, and then the Tuihatakalaua would also be considered a sacred king and only carry out his duties those 2 times in the year, and also kind of act as like the buffer zone for like immigration. And that's why the Tuihatakalaua has throughout most of Tonga, all the islands in Tonga, the best wharfage and piers for canoes and stuff, rest stops, belong to the Tuihatakalaua.
Mm. No, and that makes sense. Hey, here's a interesting that here's another. Want to say thank you to
And
Devita Toefoki.
sorry, real
Oh,
quick,
go
real
ahead.
quick. And that's why the Tuitonga named the Tuihatakalawa's son Ngata, because he was putting to an end to their disagreements with his younger brother, the Tuihatakalawa.
Mm.
Mm.
Because Ngata means to put an end to.
Bring to an end to. So
Yeah,
drawing a line in the sand, bringing back order, and that will come
yeah.
important later on when we revisit another similar situation. But this is Tevita Toefoki, has the symbol there as a paying member, so I appreciate the support there, Tevita. And he says the Tuitonga that went to Samoa for the tattoo is, we'll just say Paula. He kindly left out the other letter, which is incorrect, probably spelling over that Tuitonga.
Well,
Um,
actually, it is Pau's son Fuanunuyava who broke the tapu. It's not Pau.
okay,
Pau's son
Pao's son.
Fuanunuyava was the first Tuitonga to break the tapu of getting a tattoo.
Yeah. And he says, which then Ulkalala questioned why a Tuitonga getting a commoner's tattoo. That's when Ulkalala started questioning if the Tuitonga is not a god. So this is what happens when you break protocol, possibly, right? You break protocol, people start saying, well, what's going on here? You get chaos when you break protocol. So all right, let's come back to story of who.
Developed this kingship and his kingdom, and he had this sort of system. Boats, the master to build his houses and everything. They were all Samoans, and he put all Samoans to as his matabules and to all like and the Eikis, and still exists to this day. Um, so you, if you look at when the king of Tonga uh, departs from this earth, right? When the king of Tonga dies, you will see there's one particular figure that stands to guard the coffin of the king. And this person is known as Lawaki. Now, there's only one person in Samoa that held the Bule Lawaki, that had the title Lawaki in Tonga, and the title Namulaulu in Samoa was Lawaki Namulaulu, the first leader of the Maua Pule. Now, Lawaki is very significant because he's the only figure in Tonga that stands next to the coffin of the deceased king with a toto and fue. Now, there's no other culture in the whole of the Pacific that stands with a toto and fue except for Samoa. And now Lawaki in tradition is known as the undertaker of the king. He is the only person who is allowed to touch the body of the deceased king of Tonga. Now, now that shows you the level of understanding there is between Samoa and Tonga, because kano kupolu, tui kano kupolu, the line kano kupolu is ano of upolu, or the flesh of upolu. The lineage traces its roots back to upolu. Now, whatever this person said that this was done as a punishment for the Samoans, yes, there was evidence of the Tongans' rulership in Samoa, but they did not rule all of Samoa. Now, let me pose a question to you. Wherever the Tongans were, you have remnants of the walls that they built, of the foundation of the houses, or they even name places that they were at after Tongan names. Now, in Samoa, the only place where there is evidence of the rulership of the Tuitonga was in Savai, the big island of Savai, where you have the pool of Vaimoa, where they used to throw Samoans into that hole as a punishment. Now, the only time that the Tongans actually mentioned them setting foot
Hey,
in Upolu is
hey, it's getting a little emotional. Okay, well, we'll let him finish this and then we'll
when
pause.
they came for this invitational that they came, and hence where Tuna Fata Savea and Ulumasui and the two sons of a chief of Alepata, where they started this war against the Tui Tonga Talefei in Alepata. And in Alepata, we have evidence where lands are named after this particular event. We have Satitoa. Satitoa, it means Satia Toa. Satia means the killing of warriors. Satia Toa, the killing of warriors. Which warriors? The Tongan warriors. Then you have the village of Malai La. Malai is the field and La is the sun. So the reason why
Hey.
this place was called Malai La is the whole name is called Malain Safa'alalai Tino o Tangata Tonga, which means this was the field where the bodies of the slain Tongan warriors was laid out drying in the sun. Now, even if you look at Tutuila, Talaifeki sent Lautivunia. Lautivunia.
Let's pause there. Lot to cover there. Okay. Flesh of Upolu, I think we've kind of answered that a little bit. That was actually, in a sense, a marker that it's not a direct power in Tongatapu. But how about his other points? Anything stuck out to the discussion here?
No, not really. I mean, we know. I think the only thing that pops out of that the main thing is to understand that what happened with Talakai Faiki, it wasn't a war. It was more like a skirmish. And the Tuitonga said that he'll never come again, as if he ever visits Samoa again, he'll never come to make war, but just as a friendly visit. But if you understand the Tongan history, and so if you count the generations from Talakai Faiki up to Momo, which is a good number of centuries, the policy of Tonga towards Samoa after Momo gave Samoa kind of like their independence, the policy and Samoa was cut from the root to become a branch, no longer part of the root. The policy of Tonga towards Samoa was more of soft power. and they achieved the soft power by marrying into the important families, picking which families to marry to that would fit Tonga's agenda, not just in the local politics in Tonga, but also in the politics of soft power and influencing Samoa.
Mm.
And so what Talakai Faiki says when he's in when he's leaving on the canoe and shouting Marietoa Marietau and whatever words he said after that, he's no longer going to come back to war, but just as a relative and a friend on a friendly visit. He's basically in a way restating what Tonga's um, policy towards Samoa was since Momo gave Samoa their independence. He
Mm.
wasn't really saying, in other words, Talakai Faiki was not saying something new. He was just rephrasing, because a lot of these guys, you know, all these guys, these warriors that he named, some of them were actually his nephews by blood. They were blood relatives.
No, and that's the interesting thing. Remember, Masi, when we spoke with Jake Fitzimanu, that's according to from Jake's perspective,
Yeah.
right? Talakai Faiki's mother was Samoan, and from their perspective, the village where it happened was his mother's village. Like
Mm.
it was like, dude, like it was like so, like you're saying, this is all blood, and it's always kind of like stuck in my head because what within the same generation or the next generation, the Marietoa marry into Talakai Faiki's daughters, one of Talakai Faiki's daughters, and that's where like that's what
No, no, no. It's a couple generations. I think it's 200 years later.
200 years later. Oh, it kind of sounded to me when I first heard it like it was like
No, no, no.
relatively soon after
Nah.
that
It was
situation.
so 200 years. We're talking about like 5 generations later.
Okay. So it's very interesting because it is like a family affair, literally. You doesn't get more family. So the question now becomes, if that's where Talakai Faiki, if that's true and accurate, that's Talakai Faiki's mom's village, Homeboy was probably visiting that, maybe even grew up there sometime, spent time there, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
this whole situation, it made me think like, was this by design? Is this like the ancient propaganda efforts that we see today where you stage a quote unquote revolution and a war, and then this new line comes up and it becomes a very influential line, and you take on the Maria Toa statement. And who knows? I don't know. Politics is a funny thing. I want to highlight one of our um, paying members comment here, and he may have missed it in the beginning. Mr. Ateroa, can you please answer this question from UTOL? Get him on the podcast, please.
Yeah, yeah, UTOL. We have multiple occasions. He agreed before to come on, and then coming to schedule a time to come on the podcast, he has backed out, and he's even said he's not gonna react to any of our episodes. But obviously, he's looking for some content to talk about. So he's been using our content, and maybe a constant. He has us on on his dial when we come up, and he's probably watching now if he's always responding to our videos.
Yeah.
But we have already put the invitation there, UTOL.
And it's fortunate for us, but unfortunate for him. He reminds me of, you guys remember the movie Mask of Zorro, right?
Mm,
You know
Yeah.
the
yeah,
movie Mask of Zorro. After Antonio Banderas's brother gets killed, and then he's drunk in the bar, right? And Antonio Banderas in that moment is story of who, right? He's there. He's been egged on by all his Samoan followers, and because he's recognized as one of the great, influencers of history, and he's all pumped up. He's drunk the Kool Aid, and homeboy's running out to go and fight the American soldier that shot his brother. And the only difference is, or maybe we're the old Zorro. Maybe I'll take that back. Maybe we're the old Zorro, and and we're just stopping him and say, you are fighting very bravely, but you are going to die very quickly. And that's literally what's happening with Story of Bo. I admire that he's responding. It's good for us. But he's dying very quickly here. And see, and this is the mistake I think he's making. We gave him the benefit of the doubt when he was talking about stuff that's happening in Samoa, but every time he's crossed and tried to correct us, it hasn't been good for him. But now he's gotten so bold, he's stepping into Tongatapu now. Yeah,
Unfamiliar territory.
yeah. Now he's coming with this new idea of the Samoans invaded Tonga. And I'm starting to see this like the spear of Ama. I never heard of Ama Maui Tegelangi until this thing where it's like, that's why they said the spear of Ama conquered Tonga. Then I find out, oh, Ama is a close relative of the
spear.
Tonga.
See what you need to understand, Tua, is spear of Amma means it's a metaphor when you cast when a chief or a warrior casts his spear and it lands on one of the kingly lines, it's a metaphor for having your daughter married to the king.
Mm,
Mm.
mm.
Hey, Masi,
What's
I
up?
have I have a question for you to answer. This is from the moon. This guy is one of those on Facebook. He even has like a top follower content
Hmm.
like thing next to him, but he's a big opposition. But he says, I would rather believe historians with PhDs and years of research than three guys podcasting for the bedroom and living room. Musty, have we
I,
had someone
I
with
have
with PhDs?
let me say this to that comment. You know, all those PhDs that want to research Tonga, tell them Tua and Masi, who do they go to Tonga and interview to get the information for their PhDs? Who is that guy? Bring that up again.
Yeah,
Bring that up. Bring that up. What's his name?
the moon, the moon
Ainga.
ainga.
Damun Ainga. Damun Ainga. All those PhDs who want to do the research. Let me give you this question. Who do they go to Tonga and interview so they can get their PhD? Take a guess. Take a
So,
guess.
so they go to the kava session and learn from there.
Who do they go interview to so they can earn their PhDs at the university? I'll take a guess, and I guess that's the end of that. Bye, Damun Ainga.
And but here's the funny part, Masi, and share them. Did what happened, Masi, when we brought the guy with the PhDs and not just his PhDs, but uranium thorium dating PhD, coastal water flow PhD, all these PhDs,
Archaeology. Mm.
archaeology. What happened when we brought those PhD guys on too as well, Masi? We bring everybody, like Mr.
Correct.
Mautegelang is saying. We brought the guys who helped the guys get the PhDs, and we brought the guys with the PhDs.
Yeah, yeah. No. It's like I said. We open invitation because that is the Daranoa that we like to have, and we have people. We like to have people have come with their ideas and let the ideas compete. And like Maui Tekelangi say, there's a reason why the PhDs in Polynesian or Pacific history, they have it, doctorate in Pacific history or Pacific Islands. They go and get it from the source, from people like Maui Tekelangi. So that's the info there for those, because PhD is all it is learning from somebody else.
All right, let's come back and finish the story of Poe. He was getting a little emotional earlier.
his cousin to go and conquer and take control of Tutuila. What did Lautivunia do? He went there and he stole the betrothed taupo to the taupo that was betrothed to the son of Maunga, his name was Fa Autor. He stole her and stole her fine mat. And this angered Fa Autor and led the rebellion that actually pushed back on the Tongans and their rulership that they tried to take over um, Tutuila. Now, what evidence is there to prove that? Now, there is, if you're from Tutuila, you know the old marriage school, right? Right behind
The old one. You know, the one that was so old that no one's ever heard of? Like, that's usually what we hear when we say, hey, when was the Tui Manua in church? This is the old one. That's the old marriage school, Masi. I just thought I wanted to bring
Okay.
that up. It's the
Okay.
old one. Not the old one, the
Mhm.
old one.
old marriage school that is, I think now it's closed down. There's a piece of land there that is called Numia Atonga. Numia means to crush. So that land is called the crushing of the Tongans or Numia Tonga. And that's the evidence of what happened to the Tongans that came with Lautivunia. Lautivunia, it's
Oh, I guess that's it. That's it for that. Any closing,
Okay.
any new Mia that we need to discuss here?
Mm.
Oh,
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 I'm hearing the background.
because the next video. Let me just
Okay.
close. Let me just close that. Go ahead.
No, no. I was just gonna just summarize kind of what I've learned from this segment from story of who here. So pretty much Hamoa was part of the root, right? Then it was kind of cut off. Now it's part of the Polynesian state, like the branch, like every other Polynesian islands out there. And now it's just been kind of like the Tongatapu as the center. And another thing that I've kind of learned too is it makes sense of it used to, Ha'amoa was the Ha'amoa, but because they had to do the Sa, like Sa, then it came as Samoa. And that's where, because I've been hearing a lot of theories of like, where did
Sacred
Samoa
Center.
come from? And even like some Samoans would like share some Samoa something, but all it was is the s- the oral history is you guys had to change because you were cut off from the center, and then you become a state, a confederate state
Big boy, big girl.
with the capital with the capital in
Mm.
Toatapu, and then go from Ha'amoa to Samoa. So that would help
Oh,
explain where that's come from, because there's so many theories of where Samoa came from, and I can't even keep track of how many theories there are.
Masi,
And then that seems to be, to me, that's what I've learned on this segment from us discussing on this
can I put that into a
and
story
and and
narrative?
and Samoa went from Akamai to Poto.
Poto. Yes.
So I want to put that into a storyline narrative, right? This is why we like nicknames. I think we learned it from Uncle Donald, maybe, and we like storylines and nicknames. But so what I'm hearing is there was mom and dad, that's the Tuitonga and the capital. There was an older child that was Samoa, and the older child who had everything taken care of for them, right? Don't have to worry about the bills. You just get
Mm,
the benefits of being in the home. And one day the child said, I'm tired of these rules.
mm.
I'm tired of mom and
Protocols.
dad. You
Mm,
know, what is this? I have to do chores, whatever. So mom and dad said, okay, son.
give you
Okay, son.
independent. Mm,
I'll give you your independence. But when you get your independence, I'm going to take your cell phone away. I'm going to take your internet away because you're now a big boy. You're now a big boy, right?
mm,
You're a big boy. Then after the first 2 months, the big boy came home and said, Mom, Dad, uh, can you pay for my cell phone bill?
mm,
Can you take me out to dinner? And it
mm,
sounded like mom and dad said, "Oh, because we love you, son. You still have to pay all your other bills, but we'll throw you a bone every once in a while and help you
mm,
out, right?" Because that's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like the typical family story of big boy, big girl wants to wear big boy and big girl pants, and then got a little too scared and gotta gotta had to come back home and ask for some additional support.
Yeah, that
But
kind of that
yeah,
kind of that kind of is the situation. And I mean, even when you read the history books of Samoa, many of the villages throughout Samoa were still considered Tongan villages.
Mm,
Um, even up to the point where Dubo the First um, was settling the civil war in Tonga. Once the civil war was settled in Tonga, a number of chiefs in Tonga wanted Dubo the First to also move into Samoa, because a lot of Samoa are, there are relatives, and there were actually still chiefs in Tonga that had estates and ainga and land
in
in
Samoa.
Samoa. And so Dubo the First, it's very interesting because I've been rereading uh, some of the letters written back and forth between Dubo the First, Taufa'ahau, and the missionaries. The missionaries were strongly against it, the Wesleyan missionaries, because you know how. So what happened in the Pacific was a lot of the missionary groups and societies, they carved up the Pacific, and then if you moved into their territory, you had to get permission from them. And so the London Mission Society had the responsibility over Samoa, and Dubo the First started moving into Samoa because some of the chiefs in Tonga who still had ainga and land estates and villages in Samoa. But Dubo the First, when he started moving into Samoa and using all the Samoan relatives and connections that the royal family and the chiefs had, it was the missionaries who told them to stop, especially the Wesleyan missionaries in Tonga. And he said, we're going to help. We're going to help Christianize Samoa because it seems like the London Mission Society aren't able to handle
mm,
Samoa. But the Wesleyan missionaries just put their foot down and said no. And so Dubois the First was kind of didn't come out openly and say it, but I've read the written letters. He made the decision not to go any further because of, there's always the danger of getting Britain on the wrong side, and they have all the weapons and cannons, so
Yeah,
you don't want to make an enemy of Britain. And so Dubois the First didn't continue with trying to
maintain.
influence
Mm,
to try and influence and get Samoa under Tonga's wing again. And of
mm,
course, he was using to help Christianize the country as the excuse,
mm,
yes.
but he
Well,
didn't.
and
Yeah,
that's very interesting because the similar situation happened with Maafu in the Lao group, where Maafu tried to reach out to Dupo the First almost for the same thing, right? Because some of
and
the
they used
yes,
Christianizing the Fijians as the excuse.
correct.
So
mm,
the
And
Tongans, I mean, the Tongans caught on to what the colonizers were doing, and that's why it was kind of hard to colonize Tonga, because it's the same way of thinking, and that's another proof that Tonga was an empire. And Tonga used more soft power to keep and maintain the relationships with all the islands in the
mm,
empire. And so when they saw what the British and French were doing, the Tongan could see right through it, because that's what Tongas have been doing for generations, for
yeah,
mm,
thousands of years.
yeah, no, 100%. Because not only to send Maafu there for the religion, but when Fiji was being ceded back or getting going to be annexed and ceded by England, Maafu even wrote the Tupo the First and asked him, "Hey, can you say for that exact same reason, right? There
Yeah,
are Tongan chiefs with Lao group estates and relations. Could the Lao group be under Tonga Tupo the First's kind of like umbrella to
yeah,
try and see if
mm.
he could save the Lao
yeah,
group?" But remember, Musi, we talked about this, but it was
Yep.
probably a political. It was like, hey, we could try to extend
Calculation.
and then
Iyo.
risk the whole of Tonga collapsing in trying to overextend,
yeah.
and then make enemies out of the
Yep.
wrong people. All
Yep.
right, perfect. Closing that segment, and as always, we say, don't be afraid to ask the hard questions. Be bold and always stay curious. Till
Yes,
next
sir.
time. Peace.
Peace.
Later.